So what is typography? Typography is much more than choosing a simple font from a drop-down menu. Typography is how a word looks and feels. Think of typography as the clothes that words wear. Dress your words well and they'll make an impact and a good first impression. Dress them up like ugly ducklings and they'll instantly be forgotten. Graphic designers really do sweat over typography. Furious fights can erupt over typefaces and everyone has their favourites. There is only one golden rule everyone has agreed upon. Never use Comic Sans. It is universally agreed by all designers in the known universe that Comic Sans is the most overused and misused typeface on the planet. Created by Vincent Cornair in the early 1990s for Microsoft, Comic Sans was intended to be used for a comic book program. Unfortunately, it has been used and abused to the point of agony. Using this typeface for serious work should be punishable by being fed to sharks, shot into space, or deserted on an island far from everyone. Typography is so important that some designers have built entire careers from it. Like any form of graphic communication, typography has a lot of terminology, techniques, and technology to understand. So, let's dive in. Words have always been important, but for most of human history, people could only communicate by talking to each other or by handwritten letters or books, and books were incredibly expensive. Before the invention of the printing press, books were expensive because the time it took to handwrite each individual page and especially treated animal skins called parchment needed to make the pages. How expensive, you ask? Well, around the year 1100, a simple book that took 4 weeks to write would cost £2.13 to buy. That is the equivalent of almost £2,000 today. Knowledge and learning was reserved for only the very rich and powerful, so most people didn't bother learning to read. Then popped along Johann Gutenberg and his printing press. Johann Gutenberg was born in Mainz, Germany around 1400. He was a goldsmith, inventor and printer and introduced the printing press to Europe around 1450. The world's first movable type system was invented in China. The technology spread to Korea and they modified it to use metal, but it was Gutenberg who perfected the system's efficiency by creating a mass-produced movable type out of metal to print the much simpler European alphabet onto the page using oil-based ink. This printing press suddenly made it affordable enough to create books and pamphlets, and was the single most important invention that sparked mass education and communication. For the first time in history, information could pass unrestricted, and this broke the monopoly of education by the rich and powerful. Anybody could now learn to read and write. Most of the terminology we use for typography today comes from these original presses, and graphic designers need to know these terms. Typography has a whole vocabulary of complex terms. Anybody working within graphic design needs to be able to talk about type properly. We'll only be looking at the most basic of terminology that you need to know for graphic communication. Each character in a typeface is called a glyph. Whether this be the letter A, the number 5, or an exclamation mark, they are all called glyphs. Glyphs make up a typeface. What is the difference between a typeface and a font? A typeface is a family of glyphs. A font is the special formatting and use of that typeface. Take the typeface Arial. Arial was designed for monotype in 1982 by Robin Nicholas and Patricia Saunders. Although created for IBM, it was Microsoft in 1992 that chose to make Arial part of a suite of system fonts for the Windows operating system. The typeface Arial has several different individual fonts, such as Arial Black, Arial Narrow, and Arial Round. There are several families of typeface, but the two you must know are serif and sans serif. A serif is a decorative line or taper added to the beginning and/or end of a letter's stem, which creates a small horizontal and vertical plane within a word. Serif typefaces are often more formal, serious, and imposing. They can also be more difficult to read for those with dyslexia. So in a nutshell, serif fonts have those decorative lines or tapers, also referred to as tails or feet, while sans serif fonts don't, hence the sans in their title. Without tails or feet, sans serif fonts are made up of simple, clean lines that are the same width throughout. Sans serif fonts can be less formal, less serious, and more inviting. They can also be easier to read for those with dyslexia. Some of the most commonly used serif fonts include Times New Roman, Garamond, Baskerville, Georgia, and Courier New. Some of the most popular sans serif fonts include Arial, Helvetica, Proxima Nova, Futura, and Calibri. So what else must we know? All glyphs sit on an imaginary line called the baseline. The height of the main part of the letter is called the X height, the height of a lowercase x. Part of a glyph that goes below the baseline is called a descender. Parts of a glyph that go above the X height are called ascenders. The point size of typography is measured from the bottom of a descender to the top of an ascender. The spacing between individual letters is called the kerning. The space a word takes up is called the tracking, and both can usually be adjusted. The space from one line of text to another is called the leading. It is measured from one baseline to another. Text can be aligned to the left, to the right, into the centre, or fully across a layout. Text can also be made into superscript or subscript. Graphic designers use this terminology and knowledge when planning layouts and editing typefaces. So, now it is time to put your typography knowledge to the test. See how many of the terms you can remember, or start sketching and designing your own typeface. You may want to try making your own hand-pressed glyph, or jump to the computer and edit a typeface on your system. Most importantly, have fun.